Alright everybody, today we're looking at how to use the geometry nodes to do some basic scattering. So, I have a blank project. I just very quickly modeled this crappy little blade of grass, a single blade, and a crappy little low poly rock, because we don't need our models to look great right now. The whole point is the method. What we're going to do is use the new geometry nodes to scatter these objects along a terrain. So first things first, I'm going to pop up to mesh, select landscape, and then we'll just pick a nice one. That works fine for me, for mounds. We're going to scale it up so it's not so tiny. And then I'm going to scale it down on the z-axis just a little bit so that it's not so mountainous looking. There we go, we got some variance, but it's not too crazy looking. Gonna give it a basic material, kind of ground-like, dirt. Alright, there we go. Now, what we're going to do is pop open a window and go to Geometry Node Editor. This is where the magic happens, and it is kind of magic. So if you just hit New, you start out with a group input and output. It's going to seem a little confusing at first, but we're going to go through it real fast, and it should give you an idea of what's going on. First things first, Control A. Go to Geometry. We need a Join Geometry. This is going to allow us to keep our terrain as well as our newly generated geometry. Then we're going to go down to Point Instance, right there, and Point Distribute. A little weird you need both of these. They might refine it at some point. Could just be one big node. Now the reason our terrain disappeared is because it's not included in our generated terrain. So if we just take this little dropper right here and select our blade of grass, we just generated a whole bunch of grass and it's gigantic. So one thing you want to make sure is that your scale is applied to your object. So I'm going to select the blade of grass and just hit Control A. We're going to apply scale, and that brings it way down already. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit more. Do the same thing. There we go. Now, we'll be able to see our terrain if we just take our original group input and drag it right over here in the Join Geometry, and bam. Now we get a little bit of a reference for scale, and we can see our grass is still way too big. I'm going to scale it back down even more. That is still too big. Alright, that's fine. We can control the rest in the geometry node system. Now you can affect your density right here, and you see we already are doing a pretty good job at inhabiting this space. I know my grass isn't the best. It's a little thick, huh? Let's see here. There we go. Skinny it up a little bit. That looks a little bit better. Now, some cool stuff you can do with this is randomize attributes. So I'm going to hit Shift A, go up to Attribute, select Randomize. Just drop this right here. I'm going to scooch this guy over so we have a little bit more room. You're going to plug your geometry from your Point Distribute into your random attribute, and then that right back up into your point instance. And then you just put in an attribute. So in this case, we're going to do scale. And we have now randomized the scale from a minimum of 0, a maximum to 1. I believe 1 is the original size of the object, so we go 1.5 maybe. Down to a -1. See what happens. Oh, it looks like we're going to have some going the other direction now. We don't want that. So we'll go down to a negative 0.1. There we go. If we increase the density, you can see that's adding some scale variation. We could probably do a little bit more, huh? That's fine. Now, the rotation of the blades are based on the normal of your object. So because this is a terrain and the normals are not all pointing straight up on the z-axis, you are going to get some natural rotation. However, that is another thing that you can randomize. So I'm going to select our random attribute, hit Shift D, duplicate it, just drop it right here. We'll just change scale to rotation. Alright, went a little bit crazy. Create some crop circles or something. So we'll start with 0 and 0. Alright, so that defines each blade's rotation by itself. What we can do is just mess with these a little bit and see what looks acceptable to us. Probably a 1 and 1, maybe? Nope. Looks like we're having a couple that are rotating down. That's not too much of a problem. Just whoop, bring that in a little bit. There we go. Got a little bit more of a random rotation going on there. Sometimes just changing the seed up helps a lot as well. And I'm going to increase our density a little bit. We're at 2,400. Let's go to 5,000. There we go. Lots of grass. And the cool thing about this is you can just take this system, select these with B, hit Shift D, and duplicate the whole thing. Got to re-input your original geometry. And then instead of this going to your output, you're going to join it back together right here, and then send this to the output. Now what that just did was doubled our grass, but because it's got all the same settings and all the same seeds, it just made them right where the other blades are. So if we just change our seed, we've just doubled our grass density. So that's a nice easy way to do that. But we're just going to take this right here and select our little rock. As you can see, it's gigantic, so we're going to hide that and then scale this guy down a whole bunch and apply the scale, and then Alt-H to unhide. And we're going to keep doing that. Oh. There we go. And we're going to keep doing that until we're a little happier with our results. There we go, now we're getting there. So we got a whole bunch of rocks going on here now. Now, maybe we don't want these to be quite as dense, so we'll go for 2,500. And we can adjust our scales a little bit too, so that we have potential of larger rocks. And a cool thing about this is you can just keep adding to these systems. So just how we doubled our grass, you could double your rocks and then change the scale factors there. Mess with the seeds a little bit. we can rotate like crazy. And there we go. We've scattered a bunch of awesome rocks there. Let's add in one more thing just to keep it fancy. Let's do a nice tree. So I'm going to come down here to curve and go to sapling, tree gem. And we'll just select a nice preset. By the way, if you're not seeing the terrain or the tree sapling, all you need to go in, you just need to go into your preferences and enable those. Let's try, we'll do a Japanese maple. See how that looks. Oh yeah, that's pretty. And then we'll go in and just add a little bit more detail to it. So let's add one more level here. Make sure we have some nice leaves. Looks pretty good. And you can actually use this to animate it and give it an armature as well, but we're not going to do all that. Alright, so we have our tree here. I'm going to give it a quick kind of tree-ish, brownish material. Something like that. We'll go back into our material preview so we can see what the heck's going on. And select our leaves, and let's make them a nice vibrant red. Alright, looking pretty good. Now with these being two separate objects, it's going to be easier in this case just to join them together. So with the leaves selected, I'm going to hit Shift and select the tree, and then hit Control J. They are now one object. And then we're going to scale this tree way down like we have everything else, and hit Control A, apply scale, and move it on the Z-axis down here so it's out of the way. And we just pop onto our original terrain here. And we'll do the same thing we did. Select all these guys right here. Shift D, drop them down right below. Reconnect the base geometry. Looks like we missed this guy here. That's okay. Kaboom. And then we need to feed this guy right down into here. If I'm going too fast, I apologize. And for the people that think I'm going too slow, sorry to you as well. You know, it's trying to find a nice middle ground here. We're doing what we can. Alright. Now, first of all, I'm going to make sure our density is way down. Otherwise, it's going to cause a whole bunch of problems because this is a much more complex object than my my blade of grass and my rock, both made out of a cube with just a couple little tweaks. Right in our point instance node, we're going to exit that and then just grab the picker and select tree. And then whenever we go up here, we got trees. They're a little bit crazy right now. That is due to our randomized attributes, so we'll just take this, zero it out at the moment, 0 and 1. There we go. So with the trees, we have quite a bit of variance in our potential size just from a 0 to the 1. So the 1 is, I believe, the original tree size. So what we're going to do is just bring our minimum up a little bit to like a 0.5. Yeah, that looks fine. And then for our rotations, we'll just tweak them a little and see what happens. Alright, looks like 1 in any direction is like a 90-degree rotation in this case. So we'll do something like negative 0.3, tab 0.3. That might be a bit too much rotation still. We'll do a 0.15. Oh, negative 0.15, tab 0.15. There we go. That looks a little better. So we can go in and change our density all we want, but we want to be able to see what's going on. So what we'll do is we'll have maybe like something like that would be good. Is it showing our leaves? It's not showing our leaves. What's going on there? Oh, they didn't join for some reason. Oh, okay. This is why they did not join. So our tree is actually a curve. So with it selected, you just want to right-click and go to Convert to Mesh. And then we need to select our leaves. Shift, select your tree, Control-J. Now they are joined together properly. And that is looking much better already. Okay. So we got us some grass, we got us some trees, we got us some rocks. I mean, that is pretty much the tutorial. Just wanted to give you guys that haven't had a chance to mess with the geometry nodes a quick overview of pretty much its most basic function. There's a lot of crazy stuff people are doing with these things. Like the stuff that's just way beyond what I know how to do with them. But this base function here was kind of the main purpose of this version of the geometry nodes. And it is pretty awesome overall. So all I did was I duplicated our object, and a cool thing about this is that they all have their own individual geometry nodes as well. So you can see this 4 right here means that there's 4 objects using this particular setup. What we can do is with one of the back objects selected, you can just click that, and it now becomes its own object. So we can go down to like the trees, for example, and increase our density. Or we could go over here, or maybe try the back one back here. Alright, you know what? First choice is fine. We can go here, do the same thing, and then affect the rocks, and maybe increase max potential scale, decrease the density. Let's go for like 500. Whoop. Something like that. Just showing how you can mess around with the different nodes to get different effects. And then just for fun, real quick, go ahead and light this and see if we can get a pretty render. So we already have a light in the scene. I'm just going to change it to a sun. Down the strength massively. Let's try 5, see what happens. And we'll change the rotation a little bit. Bam. I might have gone a little overboard on the trees, huh? Trying to find a nice angle. Yeah, that'll have to do. Alright, so we got us a nice sun for lighting. I know we don't really need to, but let's add a little bit of hue to it. And then a real nice quick thing as well, if you guys haven't messed with the new Blender Sky, it's pretty awesome. You can just go over here to the world settings, click color, and go to sky texture. There it is. Had a hard time reading it because my cat won't shut up. It's distracting me. And let's mess around with our render settings here real quick. Definitely want to use GPU. We'll do some denoising because it doesn't have all day. And just switch our view to rendered. As soon as my computer stops slowing down. And there we go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, just like that. We've used the new geometry node system to add a whole bunch of different objects. You can do the same thing with collections as well. So if you were going to be doing this with grass or rocks, ideally what you would probably do is model a few different versions of each one so that you have some more variance. So for the grass and the rocks, these guys are these are crazy over here. One cool trick with both the grass and the rocks, you got to be kind of careful, but quick little side trick. You can go to, I believe this is our rock here. Let's just make sure. Oh, that's our blade of grass. Should work fine with that as well. Go to Modifier, Displace. Whoa, things got crazy. And we'll select this texture 0 here. Alright, so you can add a displacement modifier and then just change your coordinates to global. And what will happen is based on the position, the displacement will be a little bit different. Probably be able to see it a little better with the rock. So let's go up here, add modifier, displace, select our little texture here, select global, and then I turn the strength down because it's a little cranky. So 0.01, try that. Alright, so now when we move it, oh, is the strength not high enough? Let's see. Let's see if, oh, it might be our textures a little too crazy. Oh, there we go. All right, we made it a little crazy. So you'll have to play around with the settings because that's not exactly the look for grass that you're wanting. But yeah, go in, mess around with the settings. What it does based on the location of the object in world space, it applies the texture differently, which allows you to get a whole bunch of variance with very little work. So that's been a basic setup on the geometry nodes. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Sub if you can. I'm a tiny channel, trying to do the best I can here. And check out some of my other videos. I have some good stuff sometimes. I'll try and get some good stuff soon. Bye, guys.